It's time!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another week's edition of Strikes and Submissions. Here, I'm your host, Dorian, right here with my co-host, Mike. How you doing today, Mike?
Dorian, I'm fantastic. It's July. I cannot believe June changed. June just flew by in a blink. I don't know about you, but for me, it was June 1st and now it's July 1st. But you know what? I think with the summer being the way it is, a ton of fights in MMA, boxing, I think it'll be enjoyable.
Yeah, and I mean, June flew by, but it wasn't without good measure. We had plenty of June things to talk about. This week we're talking about all July things, basically. So first off, wanted to start off with the big announcement of the week. Obviously, Gane had defeated Alexander Volkov over the weekend. He steps in against Derek Lewis for an interim title fight. Francis and his team are kind of in an uproar about that. Let's dive straight into it, Mike. How do you feel about the whole interim belt situation?
The UFC made a mistake. I don't think they made a mistake by booking the fight. If anything, I think this is a smart play on their part. The problem is, though, and where the mistake lies, is the interim belt. Because at the end of the day, we don't know if Francis Ngannou is hurt. I don't think he is. You don't think he is, or at least there have been no reports that he is injured. So that's important because typically interim belts are only put on the line for a champion who is injured or is purposely missing time. Francis just won the belt in late March. The guy said he'll be ready by September. I understand at the end of the day, it's a business and you have to make your bread. I totally understand that. So what I think the UFC should have done, still have Gane, Derek Lewis, but fight as a title eliminator, not as an interim belt. We give boxing a ton of grief, but the one thing they do right, and they do have interim belts, but the one thing that sport does right, title eliminators. Because at the end of the day, whoever wins that fight, they are going to fight the champion. That's the most important thing for this fight. I think by putting the interim belt on the line, it's just putting way too much pressure on Francis Ngannou. And I understand why he's looking at this as a slap in the face. Do I think Dana White and the UFC brass are looking at this as if it is a slap in the face? No, they're not intending to do that. They're not intending to hurt him whatsoever. But I could see why his management and Francis Ngannou are feeling a certain way about this. But I think this could have been handled a little bit differently. I'm not mad at the timetables because the way it's looking, Francis won't fight until the very end of 2021 or the very beginning of 2022.
Best case scenario.
Yeah, and that's best case scenario like you just said. But what we have to remember is that Gane looked amazing against Alexander Volkov. Who is he going to fight? There's not too many names out there. And the UFC, again, it's a business. They're trying to make the best card possible on August 7th. So Derek Lewis, he's free. Gane, he's free. Bring them together. I think it makes a lot of sense. But the problem, though, is the interim belt. That's where I'm lost. I think you're lost. And a lot of people are upset about it.
Yeah. So originally when I first heard the news, we were texting back and forth. I'm like, man, they did Francis wrong. Like how? Why? Like Francis is one of the most likable guys in the organization. He said that he wanted to stay busy, and it seems as if they're kind of putting him on ice. I sat back, I thought about it, and I'm like, let me think of it from both perspectives. Okay, so you have one side, that's Francis' side. Just won the belt. He said, I'll be ready in September. They book an interim title fight for August 7th. So what you're saying is your ideal, if you're the UFC, your ideal scenario would be Derek Lewis knocks out Gane in 10 seconds, or Gane knocks out Derek Lewis in 10 seconds. They can fight Francis in September because they took no damage. But I don't think either of those guys are taking that fight on a month's notice. So I thought a little bit deeper into it, and I figured out why they did it. Number one reason, they stuck it to John Jones. He's the biggest loser out of all of this. And John Jones is still putting on weight, still is asking for a lot of money, which he deserves if he steps up to fight Francis. And Francis was open about wanting that fight. He wants to fight John Jones. He didn't really want Derek Lewis, even though they fought prior and Derek Lewis beat him. He didn't really want that fight. He wanted John Jones. He wants the big payday. He's the champ now. He calls the shots, or so he thought. The UFC is making it so now this interim title fight is happening. The interim title, like you said, boxing, they do title eliminators and interim belts, but we know the interim title fight is basically the number one contender fight. Who's fighting the undisputed champion? So now you're not only saying, John Jones, you can't fight Francis now. They're saying you got to wait till after Derek Lewis fights him. That's what they were originally saying. Now they're saying, if Derek Lewis wins, okay, you got to wait till after that. Or if Gane, either one, if Gane or Derek Lewis wins, you now have to wait till after they fight. So it's clogging up the heavyweight division for the belt, but the rest of the division is fluid. And the second loser in this is Francis. Because if you're going to be ready in September and someone fights in August, you're not fighting in September, Francis. Hate to break it to you. Like you said, December, January, the earliest, best case scenario. And dudes aren't taking Francis on short notice. Let's be real. You need 8 to 12 weeks to prepare for Francis. He's the heavyweight champion here. I think Stipe is a loser in this because John said he doesn't want to fight if it's not for the belt. They're not going to put Stipe and John for an interim belt. And clearly the real belt's not going to be on the line. So a whole lot of losses. But then I thought of the one win. The UFC. We get the fight that no one's mad at the fight. Everyone I've spoken to, everyone I've seen on my timeline, on all my social medias, no one's upset at the fight being made. It's a great fight. Cyril Gane's undefeated. Derek Lewis, knockout king. He has it tatted on his chest. This is going to be a barn burner. It's a little too early for predictions, but man, I think Derek Lewis is going to spoil the Frenchman versus the Frenchman, former training partner. I think Derek Lewis might put a wrench in all this, but we'll get to that another time. I think the UFC saw that Amanda Nunes is on the card defending the bantamweight strap. Is she enough to sell a bunch of pay-per-views by herself without a loaded card? Probably not. So who are we going to put on the card? We want the heavyweights on this card. They told Francis that. That's why he said he'd be ready in August or September. So now they're putting a heavyweight belt on it. I'm not as mad as I was when the news first got announced. I'm not going to lie. I'm actually okay with it. And listening to a couple people in the MMA circle, they said Francis is actually going to make more money when he does fight Gane or Derek Lewis because now it's title versus title, unification bout. There's more pay-per-view points going on. And the fight's only going to make one of the two bigger. If Derek Lewis wins, it's going to make him a bigger star. If Gane wins, it's going to make him an even bigger star. So more people will tune in. So Francis is going to get paid, which he wants to do. And I think this is the UFC's way of getting Francis more money that he's asking for without having John Jones step in my opinion.
I also think there's a positive outcome for Francis Ngannou. It's not that bad because if you think about it, he fought Jairzinho Rozenstruik May 2020, literally the first card since the pandemic started. That was the first card of the pandemic. He had a 10-month layoff, and look what he did to Stipe Miocic. You're telling me that guy can't go 10 months, maybe 12 months or longer, and have a career performance? I think he can, and as you alluded to, Dorian, it's all about the Benjamins. That's important. He's going to make a ton of money in this fight because everyone throws around the undisputed champ, especially in the UFC. I've heard that a lot. For the next heavyweight title fight, the actual heavyweight strap, that's a real undisputed title fight because you're having two champions, like boxing, put their belts together. Best man shall win, and that's what's going to happen. Another thing that I want to hit on quickly. If Alexander Volkov would have defeated Cyril Gane, this fight would not have happened. Derek Lewis would still be fighting Francis Ngannou, I think. I don't know about September. I don't know about August. But Alexander Volkov, I don't think would have gotten that rub. But Ciryl Gane, a lot of people have been saying, oh, this guy's boring. Trust me. When he's under the limelight, when he's on pay-per-view, he will deliver. Same goes for Derek Lewis. We've only seen Derek Lewis headline a pay-per-view once. And unfortunately, he ran into one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in Daniel Cormier. When he goes up against Ciryl Gane, he's looking to put on a show. And oh, by the way, it's in his hometown.
Yeah, and I think that was another big thing I wasn't aware of, that, 265 is in Houston. So they're going back to Houston. Obviously, the Chandler Oliveira fight was just there. So this is going to be another return to Houston. And when they showed him on the big screen, everyone went crazy. So he's the hometown kid. Let him headline over Amanda. I get it. I understand. And they had to put a strap on that fight if they were going to have it be the headliner. Otherwise, Amanda's title fight takes precedent over that, and it's the higher placement on the card. So when that was finally, it came out that, it's been out that it's been in Houston, but when I figured out it was in Houston, Derek Lewis from Houston, it all made sense. Okay, that's why they're putting the belt on. It's not to slight Francis. It's actually helping Francis. Like you said, it'll give him a little more time off, which I don't think he needs, because he didn't take much damage in the Stipe fight, if any. But you just don't like to see a champion get tossed aside for another fight. That was my big thing. And I feel like the UFC is also tossing John Jones aside and basically telling him, hey, retire. Go ahead. Because we're not paying you 20 mil or whatever you want to fight Francis. We'll have one of these guys fight Francis. So it is what it is. I'm the biggest John Jones fan on the planet, so I'm a little discouraged. But moral of the story, we're going to get a great fight August 7th between Derek Lewis and Ciryl Gane. It's a quick turnaround for Gane. I'm a little worried about it for him, but we'll break down that fight a little later. But moving along, you mentioned in boxing, there's champions, there's interim champions, there's undisputed champions, and there's Gervonta Davis. Tank put on for the city of Baltimore again. And I was watching the fight against Barrios, and I'm like, man, the length was bothering him in the beginning. He was getting touched. He really didn't let his hands go. And then it all clicked. Floyd came over to him in the corner and said, hey, unofficially, on the scorecards I'm seeing, you're down. I need you to step it up. Show me what we've been in the gym together. I know what you can do. Show me. Gervonta is looking at Floyd like, wait, I'm down on the card. You're crazy. He said, hey, you want me to be real with you? You want me to keep it 100? Or you want me to lie to you? I'm not no yes man. And for me, Floyd talking to him in his corner, not letting the corner talk, and Gervonta paying, like Gervonta's head was turned, like looking at Floyd outside of the ring. I'm like, wow. Of course, it's Floyd. You respect Floyd if you're a boxer. But his level of attentiveness to Floyd in that moment it kind of opened my eyes. And I'm like, wow, he's about to go finish this fight. Because when Floyd tells you you're down and you're Tank in that situation, you got to believe him. He's not just blowing smoke. He's not just trying to get you to go out there and get a highlight knockout. He doesn't want you to win by decision. Go knock Barrios out. And to Tank's credit, right after that, dropped them twice, came back next couple rounds, got the finish. Man, that was a great fight. And I'm not going to lie, no disrespect to Barrios, I didn't expect it to take that long. I thought Tank was going to walk him down like he does everyone else, and he didn't. So I think Barrios showed that he can be a household name going forward, and he is worth all the hype that he was getting leading up to the fight. But Tank is just a different breed. And I tweeted it out, man. Tank is just different. But what were your takes on that fight?
Gervonta Tank Davis is the biggest star in boxing. I hate to say it. I hate to disrespect someone like Canelo Alvarez, but that's what this showed me. He is a true transcendent star. And Canelo, you could say the same thing for him. But the reason why I say he's the biggest star in boxing is because for so long, The United States has been missing an American who hits like a Mack truck. We've had Deontay Wilder, but he just didn't have that national appeal. The only time he's been on pay-per-view was against Tyson Fury. Gervonta Davis against Barrios and Leo Santa Cruz headline pay-per-view cards. He's the real deal, and he's only getting started. And honestly, what this fight showed me, because a lot of people, they know about Gervonta Davis, they didn't know about Mario Barrios. I knew this was going to be a very tough fight for Tank Davis. I thought he would get the best of Barrios, but I predicted before the fight it was going to be a 12th round TKO. It turned out to be an 11th round, so I was a round off. But Mario Barrios came to fight, and Leonard Ellerbe, who's one of Gervonta Davis's promoters, he said it best on Twitter to Mario Barrios. He said to Mario Barrios, "You did everything in your power to mess up our plans," talking about Gervonta Davis winning and becoming a star. And Mario Barrios did exactly that. In regard, though, to the whole Floyd Mayweather coming over in the corner, I love Steve Farhood. He was the unofficial judge. To me, I think he's the greatest unofficial judge in broadcast television when it comes to boxing broadcasting. I put him over Harold Letterman from HBO. He was wrong. Flat out, he was wrong. Gervonta Davis was winning that fight. It was a close fight. He wasn't losing, though. He wasn't, because the early part of the fight, you could give it to Barrios. The middle of the fight, it could really go either way. But when you're nearing the championship rounds, that's when Tank started to turn it on. And if I'm not mistaken, Gervonta Davis dropped Mario Barrios 2 times in the 8th round. How is he down? I'm sorry, Steve. Look, again, I love Steve Farhood. He's a brilliant guy, but he was wrong. And good on Floyd for going over there, being honest, getting the attention of not only Gervonta, but Calvin Ford, Gervonta's trainer, who might be trainer of the year. But that's besides the point. But Gervonta Davis, the way he was either able to collect himself and then say, all right, time to put my foot on the gas and get this guy out of here, because he knew it. He dropped him twice in the 8th. It was competitive back and forth. I think Barrios might have taken the 10th round, which is why Floyd came over, because he saw it. But Gervonta, he just has the power to move up in weight. The thing we need to remember about Gervonta Davis, a lot of people say he's small. He's not small. He's just short. He is filled out for 130 pounds, 135, and 140. If he wanted to fight at 147, he probably could. I wouldn't recommend it, but he probably could. That's how big he is for his size and his stature. It comes to a point now, though, we need to start having a conversation about who the best 135er is. And maybe tonight's not the night to have that conversation. But right now, the 2 best 135ers are the 2 guys who fought on Saturday night, Gervonta Davis and Vasily Lomachenko. It's down to those 2. I don't want to hear about Ryan Garcia. Do not tell me about Teofimo Lopez. Yes, I know he defeated Vasily Lomachenko, but I think in another go-around with Lomachenko, I think Lomachenko stops him late. That's just my take. You could say I'm wrong, but Gervonta Davis is a star, Dorian, and I think Vasily Lomachenko's on his level too.
That's it. That's interesting. I hope they rebook that fight, actually. I do think, I think Tank's the best at that weight class. And I do agree with you in one thing you stated. He is the star that America has wanted. And now I get Deontay Wilder has been here, but like you said, Deontay Wilder, when he goes out, it's not the cleanest boxing. It's not what boxing purists want to see. It's just pure raw power and strength behind every punch he throws, and you're going down. He went up against Fury and realized that his boxing wasn't where it needed to be, and now he's correcting those changes. So maybe he'll be a little cleaner for boxing purists to enjoy. But Tank is the full package. He had, like you said, in the beginning of the fight, started off a little slow. He's kind of feeling him out, feeling the range out. But I gave Barrios the first couple of rounds. But then as it started going on and Tank started stepping a little closer and started slipping these punches that are coming, and I'm like, okay, he's ready to load up. But he didn't load up. He was just hitting him, tapping him, touching him. And I'm like, Tank, you have 1-punch knockout power. What? And as I said that, boom, drop. I'm like, oh, okay. Boom, another shot. And then last thing I'll touch on, When he went to the body, now, like you said, he's small, or he's short. So guys who are taller than him, beware. He's going to the body and he's going to the breadbasket. That shot that he dropped him with the first one, I was like, oh, like I felt that over here. I was like, yo, I got to go to the bathroom after that one. Like I had to make sure I was okay. And you just don't see guys getting dropped like that from body shots. And we saw the uppercut. He knocked his last opponent out with it, slipping my mind. But
Santa Cruz.
Yeah, so we saw the uppercut Tank knocked him out with, and I'm like, okay, when's that coming? It's kind of a little difficult to uppercut the taller guy, but he hit him with it just to the body. And I was like, okay, that was an adjustment I could see that he made. And hey, I have nothing left to say. I'm okay with putting him pound for pound number one at this point, even over a guy like Canelo, like you said.
He's in the conversation because Tank might be one of the most disrespected champions in boxing, or at least before this fight he was. If you look at all of these pundits who come out with top 10 rankings, he's not on their pound for pound lists. And it's a crime. Back in January, I made a pound for pound list for TWSN. He was number 8. Now he might be in the top 5 if I made another one. That's how good he is.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that people may dislike about him is the fact that he's with Floyd. And Floyd was hated in boxing for so many years, even though he's done great things for the sport of boxing. But aside from that, there's nothing you can say about Gervonta inside the ring that isn't positive. You know, he's moving up in weight. He's fighting guys who are undefeated. It's not like he's hand choosing, you know, these no-name guys, like undefeated champions. I'm moving up in weight to fight you, taking your belt. You got to give respect where it's due. He's not just staying put in one division. He's not ducking anybody. And if Lomachenko or Ryan Garcia want that smoke, then they will get it, and they'll get it. Trust me, because Tank, I don't see him losing for the foreseeable future. Something crazy has to happen for him to lose. He has to get caught slipping. He has to get dropped. I don't know, because he looked flawless for the second half of that fight. I almost said last night. Last week, he looked near flawless for the second half of the fight. Obviously, started a little slow, had to get the range out. But speaking of flawless, let's talk about UFC 264. For me, easily the best card of the year so far. I know we had the title fights, you know, but aside from titles, just off pure star power and name recognition, you have Conor McGregor, you have Dustin Poirier, you have Gilbert Burns, you have Wonder Boy, you have Sugar Sean O'Malley, who recently, let's dive into that. Sugar Sean O'Malley, Louis Smoka was supposed to be fighting, opening up the pay-per-view, right? Smoka pulls out. Sean O'Malley says, find me another guy. I'll move up to 45 if necessary. Whole bunch of people put their names in the hat. Whole lot of people didn't get the fight. Now, there's a gentleman, Moutinho, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Yeah. He's moving up from LFA. His UFC debut against Sugar Sean, like Dash said, Sugar Sean O'Malley. The Sugar Show returns. Now, there's been a whole lot of backlash from people saying that he's getting fed these low-level guys he's better than. He should be fighting up in competition. What do you think about all this? Because I think you and I share a similar opinion, but I just want to see where you're going with this.
I'm just happy that the Sugar Show is going to happen on July 10th. I was worried for a hot second that he wasn't going to be able to fight, and that would have made me mad. Another thing I want to touch on. Why is he opening up the main card? Look, Yana Kunitskaya, Irene Aldana, that's a great fight. Tai Tuivasa, Greg Hardy, a solid fight. But Sean O'Malley should be the fight right before Gilbert Burns, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and that's the co-main. I don't understand why that's the pay-per-view opener. I really don't. I really think the Tai Tuivasa, Greg Hardy fight should be opening up the pay-per-view. I think that's one mistake or one thing wrong with this card. And I know it's semantics, but at the end of the day, why wouldn't you want Sean O'Malley to be right before the co-main event? That's how big he is, because he co-mained the Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier trilogy fight back in August. So I don't know why he's opening it, but again, I'm happy he's on the card. There were a few other names that were tossed out there aside from Moutinho who could have fought in there, but they just couldn't make the weight on time, which I don't blame them. It is a tough turnaround that soon, but it is good to see Sean O'Malley back. I think Sean O'Malley will win this fight favorably. I could see him getting an early stoppage just because you're making your UFC debut against a guy who's a stone cold killer like Sean O'Malley. I know a lot of people right now are discrediting Sean O'Malley because he lost to Marlon Chito Vera, and that's fine. But Sean O'Malley, he's a stud. I know he's not ranked right now, but he's a solid bantamweight, and if he keeps it up, he might be ranked, and who knows? Maybe down the line he might fight for a title. But I think at this moment in time, when he fights, it's best for the UFC.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm glad the Sugar Show is staying on 264 because it would suck to see him, another bantamweight fight get pushed back after TJ Dillashaw, Corey Sandhagen got pushed back too. And, Aljo and Jan are still, we don't know when that fight's happening. But as far as the bantamweights go, well, to your one point, I think it's opening up the card because when you first transition from, the prelims to pay-per-view, you want a for sure guaranteed banger of a fight. I think Greg Hardy and Tui could be that banger, given heavyweights, one punch knockout power. You could put the heavyweights there to open, but why not open with Sean O'Malley? If he has a highlight knockout, which he always seems to have, then that's a great way to open up the card, and then you can flow into the rest of the night. But one thing I want to say, and I want to address everyone who's saying that he's just fighting cans and he needs to fight a ranked guy. First of all, Sean O'Malley isn't ranked. So him fighting a ranked guy would be a step up in competition the way that the system's currently set up. So for him to say, oh, he's ducking Ricky Simon or he's ducking Merab. First of all, Merab's booked. Ricky Simon couldn't make the weight. Tim Elliott, I don't think he's even under contract at the moment. So the names that were coming out, and granted, it was a long line of names. It wasn't just those three guys, but that just shows how much of a star he already is. So when you're that level of a star, you take what you can get. And he asked for Dominic Cruz after his win over Thomas Almeida. He didn't get it. Dominic Cruz says, I'm trying to fight up just like you're trying to fight up. He constantly trolls Peter Yan on Twitter about fighting him. And granted, I get it's just a little fun and friendly trolling, but I do think if Peter Yan accepts the fight, the UFC would make that fight, and Sean O'Malley would take that fight. One thing I do want to say, I just want to get this out there before the card. Just because we may not have ever heard of Moutinho, just because his record isn't undefeated coming in, does not mean he isn't dangerous. Everywhere I'm seeing is saying, hey, he's a go-getter. If he hits you and he stuns you, he's going to go for the finish. And a lot of his losses came trying to chase a finish, ended up gassing out later in the fight. That's what I'm reading. I have to do a little more research on my own. But I will say, Sean O'Malley taking this is not a walk in the park. You're game planning 8 weeks for Smoka, and all of a sudden you have a new guy. It would have behooved him to get off of the card maybe, because when you're just taking a short notice fight, anything can happen. And literally by anything, I mean anything. If this kid goes out and smokes Sean O'Malley in the first round, the UFC has a new star on their hands. You just beat Sugar Sean. Okay, you're the face we're pushing in bantamweight now. And Sugar Sean, if he goes out and smokes him, it's not as if that kid was expected to win. I'm sure Vegas has Sean heavily favored. I haven't checked, but I'm almost positive he's going to be at least a 300. Easy, probably 350, 400 type favorite.
Maybe in the 500s. I don't know.
Maybe. But it's a risk that he is taking. I think it's very risky, and it's courageous on his end to say, hey, I'll fight anybody. Give me whoever. This dude's not even on the UFC roster. I'll fight him. That's courageous. So obviously he has to go out and get the job done. Hopefully it's not a super one-sided fight, even though I do want Sugar Sean to win because, I'm a fan of the Sugar Show, but we want some type of competitive fight to start off the night. But the rest of the night, man, we're going to have competition. We can go straight to the co-main real quick. Gilbert Burns and Wonder Boy. Are you a fan of that fight? Because I'm seeing a lot of late pushback as if people are saying that if Wonder Boy wins and he gets the next title shot, that's not right. And does he get to jump Colby because he hasn't fought Usman? Seeing a lot of people not really liking this matchup.
What bothers me the most is that this fight has been booked for several weeks now, and you wait till now to cry about it. I don't get it. Maybe it's people who don't follow the sport as close enough, and when it comes time around fight week, they start brushing up on the card. I don't know what it is, but look, you had plenty of time to dwell on this. Now's not the time. The fight's happening. And look, Gilbert Burns, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, I don't know if this is a direct number one contender fight. I don't think it should be, at least. I think either Colby or Leon Edwards should get the next crack at the belt. But these guys will be in contention. The winner of this will probably have to fight another fight, and then hopefully they will get to fight the champion, whoever that is. It's not a guarantee Kamaru Usman will hold on to his belt. But what we have to remember is that this will be a good fight.
Absolutely.
You can try to rain on it all you want. Gilbert Burns just fought for a title. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fought for the welterweight belt twice, in 2016 and 2017. This, I think, is going to be a banger. Right now, I would favor Gilbert Burns. I know you favor Wonderboy, and Vegas favors Wonderboy, which is understandable. His striking, you can't overlook that. But right now, though, I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Gilbert Burns, he's going to try to strike. Hopefully, if you're a Gilbert Burns fan, he tries to take it to the ground. Yeah. I don't know yet. We're still over a week away, so things can happen. My opinion can change, but as of right now, on July 1st, I think Gilbert Burns has a good shot at winning that fight, and he may get the upset win.
Yeah, I think as far as the fight goes, it's a stylistic matchup. It's typical grappler versus striker. But the thing is, Burns has fell in love with his hands over the last couple of years. So if he tries to strike with Wonderboy, I don't think it ends very well. Now, I know, Anthony Pettis knocked out Wonderboy and 55er knocked him out. Let's not forget, Burns moved up from 55 too. So he's not the biggest of welterweights. So if you're a Burns fan, you pray he goes back to his grappling background and tries to get his hands on Wonderboy. If you're a Wonderboy fan, you know it's coming. It's pretty much the story of all his fights. Hey, if I can get my hands on him, if I can close the distance, I feel better about my chances. I just don't know how Burns really closes the distance on him, given that he was so in love with his hands and then Usman knocks him out on the feet. I think that could shake up his confidence. And granted, I could be wrong. I do have Wonderboy winning, but I've said this before about Korean Zombie and Dan Ige. I said I think Ortega might have given Zombie one of those Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje beatings, and the rest of his career may look different. And I was wrong. He beat Ige 4-1, I think. So yeah, I could be wrong about that. But one thing I know for a fact I'm not wrong about is the main event. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier. It's a pick'em fight for me. I go back and forth with it almost every day, but I'm pretty confident in saying I think Conor's going to get the job done. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know if you have your prediction just yet, but I think Conor gets it done. How about you?
I'm not going to sugarcoat what I'm about to say. And you and I are here not to tell your truth, not to tell my truth, but to tell the truth.
The truth.
What we have to remember with Conor McGregor, and you could say the same thing about Dustin Poirier, but on a macro and a bigger level, Conor McGregor, if he loses this, it's over. He will never get back to a 155 title shot. The days of him being a huge mega pay-per-view superstar, They might be over. He'll still have pay-per-view events, don't get me wrong, but they won't be the same. You can't say he will be fighting elite guys in the lightweight division. He may have to move up to welterweight. There will be a lot of changes that we'll have to make in his career if he loses this fight. Now, if he wins, it's like a cryptocurrency, baby. It's Conor McGregor to the moon. Because put it this way, if he wins, I guarantee you every single time you turn on your television, you will see a proper number 12 commercial. Every time you watch a boxing match, you will see a proper number 12 logo on the ring post and the ropes. I think if he wins this fight, this will not only help his UFC career, but also his career outside of the ring. And he doesn't need any help with that. Don't get me wrong. The guy is loaded as it is, has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. But that just goes to show if he wins this fight, he's fighting for the title. And also, the UFC got this one right, and it's a shame they didn't do the same thing with the Lewis-Gane fight. This is a title eliminator. They took something from boxing, and it's great. The winner of this will move on. The loser, see ya. Boxing, I remember last year, Sean Porter, he's a welterweight. He fought a title eliminator against Sebastian Formella. He won that fight, so he moved on. Sean Porter hasn't fought since, but the point still goes that if you win that title eliminator, you stay alive. But if you lose it, you start to lose a little bit of that relevance that people love you for. It happens in boxing all the time. And in this fight, it's going to happen. And you could say the same thing. Everything I'm saying, you could say the same thing about Dustin Poirier. And I wrote an article about it, which you can check out on twsn.net. But Dustin Poirier, if he loses this fight, I think his chances of getting back to a title shot are weakened. But Conor McGregor, though, I think it'll hurt him more because he's expected to be here. Dustin Poirier shocked a lot of people that at this stage in his career, he's still going. Conor McGregor, on the other hand, has been a star since 2013. Do not get that twisted. Conor McGregor has been at the top of the UFC ever since then. So it's the expectation. When he fights, he's fighting in the biggest events, but he has to win in order for that to continue.
Absolutely. And I mean, you hit it on the head. This is game 7. This is win or go home. This is, hey, if I win, I'm fighting for the belt. If you win, I might have to fight Beneil Dariush if I want to stay in the division, and no disrespect to Dariush, he's a great fighter. I just think, like you said, there's levels and there's a lot at stake in this fight. It's not just trilogy. Oh, he beat me twice, I beat him once. This is bragging rights for the remainder of your career. This is, hey, if I'm Dustin, I'm a better fighter than Conor McGregor. If I'm Conor, I'm a better fighter than Dustin Poirier. Now, both of those statements are huge statements because Dustin Poirier and we'll talk about this a little later, I have him as probably the second best lightweight of all time. Conor McGregor, if he gets this win and he gets the belt, I have to start looking at him. Like you said, the proper 12, the logos will be in the octagon. They'll be ringside. They'll be at all the Triller event. Like anywhere fighting is, proper 12 will be there. Even if he sold his part of the stake, he's still promoting it. It's still him. We know who that is. It's Conor. I just think that a lot of people are making the fight to be about simply, the calf kicks that Dustin hit Conor with, they immobilized Conor. If Conor can get out of the way of the kicks, maybe go back to the karate style, then that's that. He'll win. I agree, but I don't think that's all to the fight. Khabib actually came out and said, if it ends in the first round, Conor wins. If it goes past the first round, Dustin wins. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I also don't disagree, if that makes sense. Because we all know Conor doesn't have the greatest gas tank. No surprise here. Dustin knows that. Conor knows that. What we do not know is if that power really carries over into those later rounds. Against Nate Diaz, he was dropping him all throughout the fight. Granted, a little higher weight class. Conor's a little heavier, didn't have to cut so low down to 55. So it may be a little different. But later on in the rounds, if Conor can tag Dustin with those same shots he was tagging him with in the first fight, because I had Conor winning, or excuse me, the second fight. I had Conor winning the first round of the second fight, even with the leg kicks.
Yep.
And I feel as if Conor knows the leg kicks are coming. Dustin knows the leg kicks are coming. If Conor throws his own leg kicks, which he did in the first fight a little bit, just throwing kicks in general, random hook kick, random wheel kick, Dustin's kind of on backing up, whoa, what is this guy throwing at me? Gets caught with one punch, goes to sleep, right? Same thing with Conor. Conor's getting kicked, has to worry about defending leg kicks. Boom. Dustin puts him up on the fence and just tees off on him, gets the KO. I don't see this fight even going that way. I don't think this is going to be a stand-up battle. I think Dustin, if he knows what's good for him, he's going to try to clinch Conor immediately, try to get a little, have his arms get a little heavy, maybe the legs get a little heavy, get some little dirty boxing in the clinch, maybe even shoot for a takedown again like he did in the the second fight. I think that was a huge factor in the way Conor approached it. He was like, wait a minute, he shot for a takedown in 30 seconds. Like, what the hell just happened? And now Conor has to worry about the takedown. Now Dustin's letting the hands go. And it's a little different now. Conor, I saw a billboard that had Conor, his famous, and it said UFC 264, he's back. And Conor says, the first one to shoot is a Dusty B.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, Conor's back to trash talking. Dustin just came out in an interview yesterday and said, hey, how about the first one to get knocked out is a Dusty B? Because this is mixed martial arts. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to mix it up. And Dustin knows just as well as anybody the calf kicks hurt Conor. I think he's going to try to switch up the game plan and maybe try to wrestle him a little bit. And I'm one who always says Conor has really good takedown defense. You can kind of throw a Khabib fight out the window. Everybody gets taken down by him. But aside from Khabib, man, Conor's been really hard to take down throughout his entire career. But Dustin has the size and the strength to be able to do it. If he can get him down, I think he has a chance. If he can't get Conor down to the ground, I think Dustin is gone out of here in the first 2-3 rounds.
Actually, and Nader just commented this, and I do agree with him. I think if it goes to the clinch, I think it favors McGregor, because that's something McGregor brought up during this whole debacle this week between the two. And I love it. I love when these two guys go at it, because that means we're getting a show. I love when they're going back and forth. I don't really like when they're respectful to one another, because at the end of the day, we know what's going to happen in the cage. We know they don't really like each other. So I would say save the respectful stuff for after the fight. Before the fight, talk all you want. But to get back to my point, the clinch work, though, I think he looked solid in the first fight, or in the second fight, rather. In the first round, he looked pretty solid in the clinch. Now, Dustin tried to use that to get a takedown, and he did, which I think he'll try to do again. And you said it perfectly. If he knows what's best for him, he will get a takedown. I don't know how this fight's going to shake up, but I think if Conor gets it to the clinch, he's going to try to throw a bomb, and it might land. But if he's able to get it to the clinch, he might try to get a takedown, and Dustin Poirier might get a submission. I know he hasn't submitted anybody since Anthony Pettis back in November 2017, but who's to say he can't do it against Conor? Anything can happen. That's why right now I don't have a prediction. On our show next week, if we still have a show next week, I'll have a prediction by then. But this fight could go either way right now. The first fight, I thought Dustin was going to win, but I thought he was going to win by a decision. He ended up winning by a stoppage. This time around, though, I think Conor is extremely motivated. Not that he wasn't that time around, but he has the taste of defeat in his mouth. Mm-hmm. And that's never a good sign when you're an opponent facing that motivated of a Conor. But also Dustin, he's motivated as well, because he has a lot to lose here. And he understands it might not be as much as McGregor has to lose, but I think, honestly, if he loses this fight, he's never getting back to a title shot, or at least anytime soon, because you still have guys like Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Beneil Dariush, Conor McGregor, several other fighters as well. Islam Makhachev out there as well. You can't forget about him. There are groups of fighters that I think are just going to brush Poirier to the side, unfortunately. I hate that's how this sport works, but if you lose a big fight like this, again, it's a title eliminator. That's what it is. You get eliminated.
And not for nothing, after Dustin won the second fight, he had the choice. Do you want to fight for the belt against Oliveira, or do you want to fight Conor for the trilogy? And Dana said it himself. He was like, that's a smart choice to choose the Conor trilogy fight. Your brand gets a whole lot bigger. Obviously it's probably higher paying than even winning a championship. But at the same time, if you're Dustin and say you lose this fight, like you said, he's not getting a shot at the 55 strap. He almost has to move up or down. And at this point in his career, I don't know if he can make 45 like he used to. He moved up to 55 because he was having some issues making 45. And the last thing I want to touch about this, I thought it was interesting. In the interview, Dustin said, our first fight was at 45. He knocked me out. Second fight was at 55. I knocked him out. I wanted to do the third fight at 70 just so, the trilogy can have, a whole bunch of difference in, I can't think of the word right now, just a whole lot of a difference, right? Conor said, no, 55. Like, I'm staying at 55. I want to put in a run at 55. Conor's only had 3 fights ever at 55. Obviously Eddie Alvarez, Khabib, and then Dustin too. So for me, it was interesting seeing that Dustin wanted it at 170, so it didn't affect like the lightweight rankings. And maybe he thought if he lost the trilogy, he can kind of slip back into a title shot. I don't know what his thought process was in that, but that's something that I take to my bank. And if you're mentally, you don't even want to fight at this weight class against this guy again, there's a reason for that. So that's one of the reasons I'm leaning towards McGregor in this one.
Dorian, let me ask you a quick question because I'm interested to see what you think about this.
Sure.
Because Dustin Poirier wanted at 170, do you think he has trouble making 155?
Trouble? No, only because he's been making it consistently over the past few years. I would say, and this is for all fighters, not just Dustin, it's extra 15 pounds of weight he doesn't want to cut. Yeah. If he walks around 185, 190-ish, if I can go cut to 170 or cut to 155, what am I going to do? Obviously, you're going to choose 70. And I do think that he was the interim champion before, so he can make championship weight. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think that in a fight that's so high profile, which a Conor McGregor fight is, and a fight that isn't for the belt. Because remember, they were thinking of, the fans wanted the second fight for the interim title at lightweight.
Yeah.
They ended up passing that along. So I think after Dustin realized, man, the weight class really doesn't matter when you fight Conor. It's all about you're fighting Conor. I think that's probably why he wanted at 170 as opposed to, cutting an extra 15 pounds unnecessarily.
I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. But as a fan, it scares me a little bit. I could be completely off base, and I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I am wrong. I hope Dustin Poirier has no issue. But because he said that, it might scare me a little bit heading into fight week if he's cutting it close. I think he's going to make weight, but the fact that he put that out in the universe and made it public, I don't know. That scares me just a little bit, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I look at it a little differently. It scares me that he's even saying that. And he was saying it before. I remember after the second fight, he went on the Joe Rogan podcast and he said he wanted at 170 and Conor immediately said no. So for me, that kind of says Conor's focused on 155. I want the 155 belt. And Dustin's focus may be, can we just fight again? Like, does it have to be at 55? And to me, that's a little worrisome. He's worried about the wrong things. He should be worried about a motivated Conor, like you said. He should be worried about Conor coming off a loss. Conor hasn't had 2 losses in a row in his career yet. And Dustin, not for nothing, he has a long career. He's been in the UFC for a while. He's been in some bloodbaths. He's been in some wars. I was rewatching the Poirier-Hooker fight the other day, and I don't know how either of those guys were standing after that. But
that was a fight of the year candidate, by the way.
Yeah, it easily could have won too. But I just think along with the additional weight, he just doesn't want to take that type of damage going forward in his career, because this isn't a game for older people. This is a young man's game. Both him and Conor are up there in age, or getting up there closer to older than they are younger. So maybe he was just trying to save a few pounds. But we don't have to discuss that, because we know who the greatest lightweight of all time is. It's Khabib. Now, I got on you last week for your top 50, which had a whole ton of blasphemy in there.
I disagree.
So I decided that I would make a little list of my own, a little, not 50, but a little more condensed, not as long and thought out as a top 50. I did a top 2 for each division. You guys can check the article out on the TWSN mobile app. But we have our greatest ever rankings. I can put them in order of all time. John Jones is number 1. But if you want, we can go over that, because I know you told me you had some quarrels here. You want to talk about it.
Not quarrels. I actually wanted to talk about it because I actually liked your list. Unlike you for my list, I respect your list. And I like how you did it. You did it based on divisions. And I think that's great. I really like that you did it that way. The only, I guess, gripe I have with it, even though I wouldn't really say it's a gripe because I understand your logic, it's your light heavyweight ranking. You had John Jones 1, Chuck Liddell 2. John Jones, can't argue that. Greatest light heavyweight champion of all time. Chuck Liddell, top 3, maybe 3rd, because the guy who you have as the number 2 heavyweight all time, which I agree with, I think should also be your number 2 light heavyweight of all time. Was he in the light heavyweight or as successful in the light heavyweight division in terms of championships as Liddell was? No, but Chuck Liddell also didn't have John Jones, because trust me, if Chuck Liddell had John Jones in his way or in his path, he would have lost.
He wouldn't be on this list at all.
That's why I think Daniel Cormier, that's literally my only gripe with this list. I know I could pick it apart and nitpick it, but I won't. And again, for me to criticize Chuck Liddell, that shows how good of a light heavyweight champion he is. I think, though, if I'm going to have a top 3 light heavyweight all time, I would slide Cormier ahead of Liddell. Do you have Cormier in your top 5? I know you didn't make a ranking for light heavyweight in beyond 2, but do you have Cormier?
So I do have Cormier as my 2nd greatest heavyweight. The only reason I have trouble putting him on the list above Liddell, because his title reigns were stopped by John. And it's hard for me to say you're the 2nd greatest light heavyweight of all time. You just fought the 1st greatest twice. I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to say that. And it's a reason I would have him 3rd, I would say. Okay. I just think with Chuck Liddell's just pure knockout power and the way he bursted onto the scene, and he kind of put MMA more mainstream. I'm giving him not the best. I don't think he's a better fighter than Daniel. I think Daniel would stop him easily if they both fought in their primes. I just think that it's tough when your lightweight title reign got ended twice by John Jones. But I did give him the heavyweight nod, because I think most of his work in Strikeforce and later on in his career, I think that you're a funny guy, Nader. I think most of his work was done in the heavyweight division, and I genuinely do think I honestly think he's a better fighter than Stipe, but just off the strength that Stipe beat him twice, I couldn't give him that. And it's funny. I'm going to be hypocritical because if you go to my featherweights, I have Jose Aldo 1 and Max Holloway 2. And I get Max beat him, stopped him twice, right? So understand that. But the longevity and the reign that Aldo had, and not for nothing, I'm not the biggest Aldo fan. I kind of got introduced to him in a weird way. I'm playing UFC in my create a character, my story mode. I could never beat Jose Aldo. Just never could. I don't know. So I didn't like him. And I do have to respect. I went back when I was looking through the featherweights. Jose's number one. I think he's the featherweight GOAT. And if you want to put Max's as, I think if you were to put Max above Aldo, you would have to put Conor above both of them, which I didn't do because I think the level of competition that Aldo faced at featherweight and just the amount of time and the title defenses, he made watching a little guy fun in MMA, in my opinion. But other than that, yeah, I could go DC over Chuck Liddell. I wouldn't. I guess I'm not mad at that.
Actually, let's talk about. You brought it up. The lightweight ranking rather. So you have Khabib Nurmagomedov 1, Dustin Poirier 2. I think I know where you're going, but it really, I would like for you to explain why you have him over someone like Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis, BJ Penn. Could you explain that?
I think Dustin has, like I said, he's been in the UFC a long time. Now, BJ Penn, I'll give him credit, but he was also a featherweight. So a lot of his work was there. Benson Henderson, I think Dustin Poirier is a better fighter than him overall. I think the level of competition that he's fought overall.
See, I agree, but we have to remember when it comes to calf kicks, which Poirier has mastered, Benson Henderson's the OG. So that's why if we're making a lightweight list, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, I think Dustin Poirier has been in the UFC for now over 10 years, so I'm not mad at all. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Benson Henderson, though, has to be in everyone's top 5 lightweights of all time.
Well,
look what he did in Bellator too. Look what he did in Bellator.
Right. I'm just trying to think if I could think of 5. Yeah, I would keep Benson in my top 5 for sure. I'd probably have Eddie Alvarez over him.
Ooh.
Off the top of my head, I would probably put Eddie over Benson, and I would say probably Benson might be 4th. Yeah, but it's hard to argue over Dustin when he's fought all of not all because in his era I'm saying he's fought all of the top guys. He's fought Gaethje, he's fought Khabib, he fought Conor twice, once at featherweight, once at lightweight. You know, he fought Eddie Alvarez twice. Like he has the names on his list. And Frankie Edgar, yeah, he's good. He'd probably round out he'd probably be my 5th.
Or he's in the top 10.
Yeah, he'd probably be my 5th after Benson off the top of my head. Khabib, Dustin, Eddie, Benson, Frankie.
What about Conor? I know he's 1 and 2, but he did beat Eddie. He did.
And that's the thing. If this list was strictly off of MMA math, you know, there's a lot of guys who wouldn't be on this list. Like I would put do I put Dos Santos over Stipe if that's the case? Do I put Ngannou over Stipe? Do I put a guy like Tito? Do I put Tito over Chuck? Like, do I put Rashad Evans over Chuck? And that was another light heavy I was thinking of. I'm a huge Rashad Evans fan. Couldn't figure him out. Couldn't squeeze him in on this list. Like there's a lot of things. And I think MMA math is cool, but at the same time, it's not 100% accurate, which is weird because like you can fight a guy and the other guy still be better. And you can beat a guy and I still think the other guy's better. Like Max Holloway beat Jose Aldo twice and he stopped him. Is Max a better fighter overall than Jose Aldo? No. And I don't think anyone would say that, but they fought and he won. But when you look at their careers, their bodies of work, just the overall skill that they possess, how often do we see Max on the ground? Not very often. When we see Jose on the ground, he's putting in work. So, yeah, I think the MMA math, my list wouldn't add up if it was all about MMA math. So I do think that's interesting. I don't know if you saw, I tried to sneak it in there on the list, but I do have Usman on this list. He's number 2 behind St. Pierre. Give him one or two more title defenses. I'm ready to bump him up over GSP. And for the same reason, just the resume and body of work. I need to know that not only were you champion, but were you a dominant champion? Are you still the champion? When you lost, how did you lose? Like what type of, all these things factor in. So I wanted to put Usman number 1 over GSP, but my heart couldn't do it just yet.
I'll go one step further. Right now, Kamaru Usman, I would put him ahead of Tyron Woodley and Matt Hughes. He's a tick below George St. Pierre just because of George's consecutive title defenses, but Kamaru Usman, his winning streak, you can't forget about that, and I think he will keep racking up these consecutive title defenses. But when I say I'm going to take it a step further, eventually Kamaru Usman will be better than George St. Pierre. I wholeheartedly believe that, because if you look at the level of competition between the two, George St. Pierre, one of his biggest wins is against BJ Penn, who is a lightweight. Now, I don't know if it's his biggest win, but it's one of them. Kamaru Usman, he's going up against killers. Say what you will about Colby Covington. You can make a case that if Colby Covington on December 14, 2019 would have fought anyone else, he would be the undisputed welterweight champion. That's how good he was at that time, but Kamaru Usman was just better. And I think eventually Kamaru Usman will be better than GSP.
Yep. I mean, I agree. I honestly think he's better than him now. But it's hard to say because we haven't seen Usman on his back. We haven't seen Usman really. Well, we've seen him tested. Colby tested him, I would say. And I think it's okay to put him over Hughes because his reign is ongoing as well as dominant. Like GSP had a lot of decision victories. That was the knock on him. Oh, he's just going to take you down and hold you there and beat you up a little bit, but he's not finishing guys, Boom, head kick, knockout. Okay, GSP has stand up. And then you start to see the rest of his game. So I think Usman will unfold like that. When you see him pushed, like he said, he only got to use 30% of what he knows to beat these guys. And it's crazy that he's such a high-level athlete. In his mental, he's thinking, I only need 30% of what I know and what I can do to beat you. And it works because he's undefeated in UFC. So, and another thing, if MMA math, he beat the guy who beat Usman, I think Colby beat
Caceres.
And then he fought Colby and Colby didn't beat him. So just a quick example for those who don't know what MMA math is. It's when one fighter fights another and then another person fights that fighter, and you can't compare the two fighters. They really just have to fight. You got to compare their resumes. You got to compare what they did. But yeah, that's what MMA math is. I didn't explain that when I was ranting earlier.
Overall, though, I think this is a good list, Dorian. I know we're going to wrap up soon, so I'll just make this quick. A lot of these projections, and you could say the same thing about my list, and I know Nader, he's going to be coming out with a Mount Rushmore article too, so you should be on the lookout for that on twsn.net. A lot of it is projecting, especially with guys who are still fighting, because you may have someone like Usman or Israel Adesanya slotted at 2, but if they keep going the way they are projecting, they're going to be better. And that's the way I see it. So right now, it's totally fair to put him right below George St. Pierre. Love Matt Hughes, but Matt Hughes was not facing the type of guys other than George St. Pierre that Kamaru Usman's facing. I'm sorry. I hate to admit it, but I have to admit it. I have to put Kamaru Usman ahead of Matt Hughes. I think he's a better wrestler. I think he's a better striker, and all around a better welterweight and mixed martial artist.
Yeah, and to your point, I have Anderson Silva number 1 and Izzy number 2, Israel Adesanya number 2. So, yeah, Izzy beat Anderson, so I could put Izzy at number 1, and I don't think I would get much pushback. But at the end of the day, just projecting, that would be really, really early because Anderson's title run was even greater than GSP's.
Mm-hmm.
And when you factor in the level of competition, the way he was doing it, the diverse array of finishes he has up kick. He has, getting dominated by Chael Sonnen for 24 minutes and throws up a triangle. Anderson's done it all. He has submissions, but Izzy's just a stand-up guy, knockout guy, knockout artist, I would say. But he's second as it speaks now. Yeah, so we'll be waiting for your Mount Rushmore, Nader, and we might even talk about it here if we have a little bit of time, because I'm interested in seeing you're one of the consistent commenters here, and you have a decent opinion. We go back and forth. You're a little too much of an Islam fan for me, but it is what it is.
No. There's no problem with being an Islam Makhachev fan because look, it's projecting. Islam will be champ. So I'll defend Nader here, and I don't know if he'll put up his rankings in the chat. If he does, I'll put it up. But Islam's great. But overall, though, I think it's so fun when we can have conversations like this because, let's be honest, it's kind of a slow week in combat sports. So being able to talk about this, to kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, yeah, it takes up time, but it's also entertaining because if it wasn't entertaining, we wouldn't be talking about it. So I think it's great that we get to talk about this. Just another thing that I want to check on with your list, because I don't want to take up time. Okay, you have Amanda Nunes, greatest women's featherweight of all time. So all is right in the world, Dorian. That's all I had to say on that. So continue.
One quick point. Kayla Harrison, so dominant at lightweight. I didn't put a women's lightweight division on here. Kayla Harrison would be my number 1. I don't think that's a hot take. Number 2, I'll throw Clarissa Shields up there, projected. And not to mention, Kayla Harrison dominated her fight last week. We were going to talk about it, but you can't really talk about much.
No.
Just takedown, ground and pound, arm bar. She's great. She won the tournament two years straight for a reason. Hopefully her and Clarissa meet up in the future so we can get some level of competition, or maybe she drops down to 45 so we can see her in the UFC. But like you said, a slow week. Aside from that, you have anything else that the streets need to hear from us?
No. I know next week's show may be, I don't want to say in jeopardy, but who knows? Because I know you're going to be on vacation, a much well-deserved vacation. So I know that could play a role. But
letting everybody know, I'll be OT next week out of town. If I have good service, good Wi-Fi, and we can get the show going, we'll get the show going. If not, I may just go live during the card, going to Texas for one of my friend's birthday, watching the Conor fight with him. He's a huge fan. So shouts out Laurel. Happy early birthday. And
happy birthday.
Make sure you guys download the TWSN mobile app up here. Subscribe to us on YouTube, over here, Instagram, over here, Twitter. Follow me right here. Follow Mike over there. And nothing else to be said. Strikes and submissions, no decisions. We out.